Hello friends, I'm Swapna Shetty. In this video we are going to cover about inner class. And what is basically an inner class? An inner class is a class written within another class. It is a safety mechanism because it is hidden from other classes in its outer class. So to make instance variables not available outside the class, we use private access specifier before the variables. This is how we provide security mechanism to the variables. Similarly, in some cases, we want to provide security for the entire class. In this case, can we use private access specifier before the class? The answer is definitely no, because if we use private access specifier before a class, the class is not available either to the Java compiler or to the JVM. So it is illegal to use private before a class name in Java. But private can be specified before an inner class. That is, it is useful to provide security for the entire inner class. So once we provide private to the inner class, it is not available to other classes. This means an object to inner class cannot be created in any other class, but an object to the inner class can be created only in its outer class. So let us illustrate this point by using an example. So let me create a project called inner class concept. In this inner class, I would create a class called inner class within the package com.educators with the main method. So what is the point here? Suppose I am writing bank account class with some bank account details like balance and rate of interest as instance variables, and calculate interest method to calculate interest amount and add it to the balance amount. Let's see how do we write this. So class bank account. In this I would write two instance variables, namely balance and rate, with one calculate interest method. So this method will actually calculate interest and will update the balance amount. Let's see how. So for that I require a variable called interest, which will calculate something like balance into rate by 100, and then update the balance amount. Balance equals to balance plus interest, and then print the balance. Now, if you look at this code, that is bank account class, there is no security for this code. We didn't use any access specifier before bank account class. So it comes under default access specifier. When I say default, it indicates that the class is available to any other class outside. So any other programmer can easily create an object to this class and access the members of the class. So there is no security for the bank account class. But if you look at the calculate interest method, it is very sensitive method. It should be protected from outsiders. If it is available to other programmers, they may call it and the balance amounts in the bank will be updated. Only authorized people should be able to update the balance amounts. So this calculate method, interest method, should not be available to others. So the way to provide security to calculate interest method and the rate of interest is to write them inside a class interest and make it a private inner class in bank account class. So let's see how do we do that. Just write a class private class, name it as interest. In this class, I provide variable rate as well as the calculate interest method. Now interest class is declared as private. So an object to it cannot be created in any other class. Then how to use this class interest, that is inner class. So we can create an object to the inner class in its outer class. So for this purpose I will write a method called contact in outer class where the inner class object is created. So any programmer should interact with this inner class by calling the contact method. So some authentication procedure to verify the user can be implemented in the contact method. When the user calls this method, he will be verified, and if he is a legitimate user, then only the inner class object is created. Then the user will be able to use the inner class. So how to write a contact method? So let's start writing that. Void contact. So in this I have to accept the password from the user. For that I require buffered reader. Buffered reader br equals to new buffered reader of new input stream reader of system.in to accept input from the keyboard. Now ask the user to enter password. Once he enters the password, read that password using read line and store it in a string variable called password. You can see an error. So br.readline unhandled exception type. So this method will show us an unhandled exception type IO exception. So we need not handle it. I'll simply throw it out of a method using throws declaration. Now once we read a password, authenticate it, like check if password dot equals, I'll give the direct password here, that is xyz123. Then allow him to create inner class object, that is interest in equals to new interest, and then call the method calculate interest. So this is how we are authenticating the user. So for this to use, I need to create an object to the bank account class. So for that, bank account object name is something like account equals to new bank account, and then using this object call the contact method. But okay, this is throwing an error, that is unhandled because we are calling contact method. Contact method is throwing IO exception. My main method should also throw IO exception. So simply add throws declaration. But if you see, we never passed any balance amount or the rate of interest. So I would provide rate of interest to calculate for 9.5 rate. So for that I need to declare double R here for the method. So method is double R, contact of double R. So while you are calling the method, you should pass the rate of interest. Now here it will authenticate the interest, it will authenticate the user, and then object to the inner class will be created, and then we are calling the calculate rate of interest. But here it requires both balance and rate. So while creating an interest object, I would write a constructor to pass the rate here. So for that I would say interest default constructor. In this I would initialize the rate. So this dot rate equals to rate. So this should be having a double rate again. Similarly, for the bank account also, write a constructor to initialize the balance amount. Now, while creating the bank account, I need to pass the balance amount. So for now, I'm just saying 10,000. And while creating the interest object, pass the rate, which I'm passing to the method, so that rate and balance would be initialized. So when you run this application, it will ask for the password XYZ123, and you can see the balance updated as 10,950 with an interest of 9.5, with the rate of interest as 9.5. So what we have done here is, when we have created a bank account, that is object, that is outer class object, we passed balance amount and initialized balance with 10,000. And then contact method is called. Here we are authenticating the user. If the user is authenticated, then I'm creating an object to the inner class, that is interest, and then calling the method calculate interest, which is printing the balance amount. If the user is not authenticated, what to be printed? So for that, let me write a statement. Else system.out.println, sorry, you are not authorized person. So let's see, by giving a wrong password. So I'll give some password and say sorry. Yes, it is showing me sorry, you're not authorized password. So this is how we write inner classes and provide security to the inner classes. So let's come back to the PPT. So here we have seen that an object to the inner class cannot be created in the other classes, but it can be created in its outer class. So here, when the objects for bank account and interest classes are created, they are created in memory separately, in separate memory locations, but they will have some relationship between them. How they are related is, the inner class object will contain an additional field by the name this $0. So this $0 stores the reference number of the outer class object in the memory. So this $0 is an invisible field and created in the object as an additional field. So because the reference of outer class object is available to inner class is able to refer all the members of the outer class. Next is, when same names are used, outer class members in inner class can be referred as outer class name dot this dot member. For example, I'm using same balance in bank account and interest class. So balance in outer class can be referred as outer class name, that is bank account dot this dot BAL. Similarly, inner class can be referred as this dot BL. So what is the biggest advantage of using inner classes is, it will decrease readability. Disadvantage is, it will decrease the readability of a program, that is understanding of a program reduces. So this is against the design principle of Java to be a simple programming language. So next is anonymous inner class. So it is an inner class without a name and for which only one object is created. It is very useful in writing implementation classes for listener interfaces in graphics programming. So to understand this, let us try to write a program where we display a push button, which when clicked will terminate the application. So let's see how do we write that. So for this I require a class which will create a button and add it to the frame, and I require one more class called my class which will implement the action listener. That is, I require a implementation class. So let me write first create a class with main method called, I want to create a button, so let me name the class as but within the same package com.educators and with the main method. So in the but, before I want to create a button, so write a button. So for that I have to import java.awt.star. I also need event button, event package. So for that awt.event.star. Now when I create an object to this class, I have to add a button, create a push button and add this push button to the frame. So for that, what do we do is first create a button, button b equals to new button, which would be displayed with OK. Then add this button, that is add of b. That is, what am I doing here is I am just adding push button to the frame, but this should be done in a constructor. Then add action listener to the button. So my class is the implementation class of the action listener interface. So for that, let me create my class first. That is class, my class implements action listener. So in this one, I have to write a method action performed, which is nothing but public void action performed, which will have a parameter of action event. So what happens here is I would just exit the application, that is system.exit of 0. So action performed is basically a method which is executed when the button is clicked. So when the button is clicked, when a button is clicked, I'm just exiting the application. So here, after adding push button to the frame, so here this should be extends frame. So after adding to the frame, I'm just calling the I'm adding the action listener, that is b dot add action listener of new my class, which is an implementation class of the action listener. That's all. But from the main method again, we need to create a frame by creating but class object. So for that, but obj equals to new but. So when I created an object, a default constructor would be called. Now I have to set the size of the frame, that is obj dot set size of two arguments I would give, that is first one would be width, that is 400, and the height would be 300 pixels. Next, display the frame, that is obj dot set visible to true. So this is how a button is created, and when clicked, this is the program will be application will be terminated. So let's see for how it runs. So you can see a button with OK. So when you click on this, it got terminated. So in this program, we just added action listener interface to provide some action to the button. So action listener needs an implementation class. So that's the reason we wrote my class as the implementation class of the action listener interface. So in the same program, we need not write a separate my class and pass its object to the add action listener method. That is this one, new my class. Instead, we can directly copy the code of my class into this method parameter. So let's see how it is. So what do I do is I just say, instead of new my class, I would copy the entire method, something like this. So here what to be done is, after adding the button, new action listener, since it should be an implementation class, I need to add the braces here. So here, instead of writing a separate class and passing its object, I can simply write the entire code as the method parameters. So when you run this, a button is formed, and when you click it OK, it is exited. So this is what is anonymous inner class. So it is basically used in writing implementation classes for listener interfaces. So we have just removed new my class and instead added the whole code of action listener within the as a method parameter. So that's all with the session. Thank you.